Good morning. Thank you very much for being here today. I am truly sorry that the room is not bigger. I appreciate all of you that have to stand, but very sorry about that. But let me get started and just give you a little bit of background and logistics. Let me start though by introducing who's here from the Cannabis Control Commission today. On my far left, Commissioner Bernie McBride. On my immediate left, Commissioner Kay Doyle. Far right, Commissioner Jen Flanagan. And on my immediate right, Commissioner Shalene Title. I'm Steve Hoffman, the chairman of the commission. I'd also like to just introduce a few of the commission staff members that are here today. Pauline Wynn, and she wants me to point out that while her name is pronounced Wynn, it is no connection whatsoever to the casino. Even though we are in gaming commission offices, it's just pronounced that way, not spelled that way. Martine Mango, and Martine would like me to alert the world that this is being streamed on Facebook. Yes. Can you tell people how to find it?
Yes, if you go to the commission contact page, I would first of all love for all of you to follow our social channels, but you can also find a link to our Facebook page on the contact page. You can watch a live stream there.
Thank you, Martine. Matt Giancarlo is our Director of Constituent Affairs, and somewhere David Lakeman, our Director of Government Affairs. I want to thank all of them for their help in terms of logistics. This is not a formal public meeting, but a couple of announcements that are going to be comparable to what we do in formal meetings. First of all, can everybody in the back hear me? Okay, great, thank you.
The speaker there is sort of pointing that way, maybe we could have it.
I'm sorry, say that again, please?
The speaker there is seemingly pointing that way. It's a little bit difficult for us to hear on this side.
Are you, okay?
The one in the middle of the room?
The speaker right
Okay, is that any better?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Other than the
Are there any other audio visual suggestions?
Honorary member of the staff.
Yeah, seriously. Any other audio visual suggestions?
It's not flattering.
Pardon?
The light is unflattering.
Yeah, well, that's there's so much you can only do with this kind of raw material, so I'm sorry. I'd like to ask people, please, to either turn your cell phones off or put them on silent. I would also like to ask that there be no side conversations either to other people or to somebody on the other end of a phone. I would also like to ask that there be no applause, jeering, or other reactions from the audience to speakers. Thank you for that. Let me just go over the logistics today. We have right now 48 people signed up. I believe there's another sign-in sheet outside. Anybody that wishes to speak today needs to sign in. If you have not done so already, at your first chance, sign in outside. We are going to limit speakers to 5 minutes per speaker. I hope that's enough for people to get their points across. I really do ask that each speaker be respectful for the other speakers and limit themselves to 5 minutes. Commissioner Title, are you going to do timing again?
Yep.
So Commissioner Title has generously agreed to do the thankless task of keeping people to the 5-minute limit. She will give you a little finger signal when you have a minute left, and then she has set her phone to make a really loud and obnoxious noise when the 5-minute period is up. So thank you for that, Commissioner Title. We are not going to answer questions nor respond. We're here to learn and listen. I hope you will appreciate that. And then the last thing before we get started, I just want to give everybody a sense of where we are in the process, just so you can understand how today fits into an ongoing process. We are running a process that is very comparable or identical to what we did with the initial regulations that we developed starting in the fall of 2017. So the first step in that process is what we're doing today, what we did yesterday in Springfield, which is a listening session where we're here to learn, we're here to hear what you have on your mind. We are looking at regulations that include both the existing adult use regulations and the changes that we think are necessary to them, as well as the medical use regulations. And so you're free to comment on either or both, because we're in the process of reviewing those. Once we get through the public listening sessions, we will have public commission meetings where we will discuss changes that we think might be appropriate to the regulations based upon these listening sessions, other work we're doing. And we will develop through those public meetings a set of draft regulations. We will publish those draft regulations and give the public a a good period of time, 4 to 6 weeks, to review the draft regulations and to get back to us with their thoughts. We will have public hearings as yet to be scheduled around the state where people can comment on our draft regulations. We will also have a formal public comment period where people can submit written comments to the commission with their thoughts on our draft regulations. Once that public comment period is over, we will then meet again in public as a commission and decide and debate whether we need to make any modifications to our draft regulations based upon the input we've gotten. And then we will discuss and vote on a final set of amended regulations. All of this process, the specific dates, unfortunately, I don't have for you yet, but this entire process, starting with these public listening sessions, will conclude before June of 2019. So this is the first and most important step, in my opinion, in the process. Gives people a chance to give us things to think about, to make suggestions, to offer criticisms. Please just tell us what's on your mind. It's really important that we hear from each of you. I guess the last thing I'll say is thank you all for coming today, and thank you all for sharing your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions. With that being said, I'm just going to read names off the list. You have a choice of either standing at the podium or the seat to your right of the podium, whichever you're more comfortable with. When we do call you up, I ask you to state your name and whatever organization you're affiliated with, if any, and then, again, please keep your comments to 5 minutes. Okay, anything else from other commissioners? We're going to take some breaks based upon the flow, but I don't want to put specific times on them yet. Just I want to see how it goes in terms of the number of signings and how long it's taking, but we will take a few breaks. We have a hard stop at 4, and I know that a couple of commissioners do have other commitments, so we might not have all 5 of us here for all 5 hours, but you'll have me and I think at least a couple of commissioners for the entire time. So. Anyway, thank you very much. I guess the last thing, I'm sorry, I should have said, since the meeting is being recorded, just please be aware that your comments are going to be part of a public record. And the gentleman that has the honor of going first, Anthony Crescenzi.
Yes. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Anthony.
Commissioner. Thank you very much. My name is Anthony Crescenzi, and I'm a lifelong resident of the state of Massachusetts. I'm retired, I live on a fixed income, and I'm also a medical marijuana patient. And I depend on my medication daily, and one of the recent concerns I have is regarding the supply.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
My name is Anthony
Pretty close to the
Crescenzi.
microphone, please.
Clearer?
Can you guys hear that? Say something, please.
My name is Anthony Crescenzi.
Good.
Great. And I'm a lifelong resident of the state of Massachusetts. I'm retired and I live on a fixed income. I'm also a medical marijuana patient, and I depend on my medication daily. But one of the recent concerns I have is regarding the supply of specific strains that are pertinent to my disorder. Recently, the supply for a medical marijuana patient was depleted at a local dispensary, and the same strain was available for the recreational user. I was told to stand in that line and that I would have to pay the tax if I wanted that particular strain. You know, it's a violation, Commissioner, over the regulations that require dispensaries to maintain an inventory for the medical program up to 45%. And the second factor is that the major grow facilities have stopped providing 100% sativa and 100% indica strains. These strains are very disease-specific and need to be cultivated for patient use. So as a patient, I'm appalled that a facility would take my medication and sell it to a recreational user. The shortages are real and becoming more frequent. And as a patient, I'm asking for the Commission to fracture the vertical integration program to provide a nursery class license with a barrier of entry more accessible. The initial bond should be adjusted downward or eliminated completely, making the barrier of entry more accessible for the average citizen. And by providing for a nursery class license, it means more strains and live juvenile plants would be available to the patient. For example, as a patient, I would like to be able to grow my own medication at home. It would be beneficial for me to go to a nursery to buy the specific strain I need before the plant becomes part of the matrix. As a supplier, it would be beneficial as they could rely on a constant source of genetically identical strains of cannabis specific to certain diseases. The strains would be started in the nursery and moved on to be matured and flowered in another location, whether it be my home or for my personal use, or put into another larger facility where the plant to mature and will be processed. Now, not only would I like to see the barrier of entry reduced, I would like also to see that the commission eliminate the $50 registration fee for medical patients, please. And extend the recertification time from 1 year to 3 years. For those facing financial hardships, Commissioner, these fees are an unnecessary and ongoing expense. And I hope that the commission would take this into consideration for the benefit of the medical marijuana patient. I'd like to thank the commission for all the hard work they put in. And hopefully that they can see the need for breaking the vertical integration and make it more lateral so that more of us citizens can enjoy and have access to quality medication, which we deserve. And I respectfully submit this. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Anthony. And just to pick up on that, please feel free to either today or subsequently through email, submit your comments in writing if you would choose to do so. Next speaker is Andrew Muddy.
You said we can submit it right here?
Yes, you're more than welcome to.
How are you?
We can just leave.
All right, we don't want to
Okay.
make that easy.
Good morning, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you. Took me a while to get down here, but the traffic, living on the North Shore, you know how it
Welcome to
goes.
Boston.
Yeah, welcome to Massachusetts. But thank you very much. My name is Andrew Muddy. I represent 420 Industries, which is applying for a micro business here in Massachusetts. Just to note, on the last check, we are one of 7. So what I'm going to talk about is basically our opportunities as local residents and people striving to try to make this work on the local level with very little money to try to break the barrier of entry. So 3 points of conversation I have would be the micro business itself, also safety for me as an applicant, safety as me for a business owner, and then also what local opportunity means. I also run and manage a popular advocacy group called Beantown, Greentown. Part of our motto is more weed, less greed. And in this industry, that is spot on. Like, there's a lot of greed going on, and we need to figure out how to make this for the people and not for the big corporations and everything that are coming to town. So the people of this state know what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna put this on my back so that everybody knows. Small businesses here in Massachusetts are having a difficult time doing what we want to do. Like I said, 7 micro licenses exist, and I'm one of them. So, Mr. Hoffman, you said you want to do it right. And on behalf of us as residents with very little income and trying to make this work, we're doing everything we can to afford that.
Excuse me?
Just fix it.
Okay, thank you.
You gotta get the branding right, you know what I mean? So, Ms. Title, you've always suggested that this is an opportunity for residents, and I appreciate that. You coming to vote for us and coming to bat for us is awesome. And this does cost a lot of money. Like, let's not get that wrong. I sold a house and taken that opportunity to invest in what I need to invest in. So, we're bleeding for our opportunities. There's a lot of micro businesses that need a little help. In doing so, I think there's a couple of things that we can focus on to try to help the small businesses just a little bit. You know, one of them would be maybe like a, chutes and ladders right up to, a priority review. There's only 7 of us in a line of 200 and something, so if we could get some sort of preference, just a look at our license, are all the pieces there? We're all gonna have issues with more information coming back, so anything we could do to slide that up would be great. I'm currently paying monthly rent. Our story started when we looked for a building and a town to support us, and that was the hardest thing. It took me 9 months. I found my building on Craigslist at all places, and my guy is, my property owner is awesome, and he's supporting us, but he's not gonna do it for free, so, we're paying $7 a month. and this has been going on for 10 months to get the application in place, go through all the regulations. So as you see, that's an expense. The lawyers are an expense, the engineers, the civil engineers, everybody costs money to get this business up and running. So, when you talk to someone like me that's, liquidating 401ks and doing everything we can, as a small business, how do we have that opportunity to get a foot in the door that's a little faster than these big mega corporations that can just spend tons of money and actually just wait in line and not have a problem with burning in cash. That's what I would like to present for that opportunity. One of the regulation points that was first made when regulations were put in place was that mature plants, and this has to do specifically with 5,000 square feet of grow for a micro license. I built my whole business plan and my whole endeavor based upon knowing that I would have 5,000 square feet of mature plants. In my mind, the plant's not mature until it shows sex. What happened in the interim was the Cannabis Control Commission got together with the seed to sale people, and you decided that anything over 10 inches is now a mature plant. So what that does is that it automatically takes away from my 5,000 square feet of grow, and now I'm looking at possibly only having 3,500 space for flower. So, talk about gross income, net income, I'm looking at possibly, $750,000 that I would lose to that. So please address that issue. We would like to see more. Also on the cannabis product side for micro businesses, what we're able to purchase has been limited to cannabis, and it's arbitrary. It doesn't say which side, but I believe you have stuck to to flower. As a small business, I'd like to support other small businesses. I'd like to buy distillate, especially, and I'd like to buy other products that help me make products to help everybody in the community. One other thing is safety. The safety for us as a small business owner, I have to submit 71 letters that go out. That tells everybody in the community that I'm looking to do a marijuana business, but it also has my home address attached. So therefore, my safety and my family's safety is up for consideration when this is happening. And seeing as though we're at the end of the time, those are three of the big issues that I think are really something to take a look at, not to mention the cost of them as well.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next speaker is Nicole Snow. Morning, Nicole.
Hey, good morning.
Put the mic down. Yes, ma'am.
Please.
All right.
Won't hear her.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Snow. I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Patient Advocacy Alliance. This morning, my testimony was actually inspired by Patient Safety Awareness Week that I got to see at the State House on Monday. Number one, please remove the $50 fee. It is a constant battle for patients. And we must revisit how we prioritize medical and recreational licensing. Allowing a recreational system to outpace the medical system is a dangerous notion. Not only will we lose credibility as a state agency, but we can easily tip the scale to allow this new industry to predicate on vulnerable populations. I met with the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission. I was in a room with 15 people and 4 of them were substance abuse counselors. By the end of the meeting with them, they wanted to hear more about the medical program and its virtual gateway and the single sign-on because it would be an effective tool to help their patients that are suffering from addiction. Please refer to S1128, a petition for legislation relative to medical marijuana patient safety and access, presented by Senator Julian Sear, and H3526, an act further regulating the promotion of marijuana and marijuana products, presented by Hannah King. As the chair of the Public Health Subcommittee, I find that we need to revisit and explore virtual separation for delivery and social consumption license categories. I have found important questions about how we would implement these license categories in my daily discussions with industry stakeholders that we must answer. How will delivery drivers prioritize their deliveries to medical patients? Or will we need to separate drivers for each system? And will medical social consumption facilities be placed in communities that voted no on recreational for patients? Please do something about the local level 500-foot buffer zone for medical license applicants. Would-be applicants for medical facilities that are temporarily opting out of adding medical access to their outlet simply because the adult use sensitive use regulations are less stringent. That's not fair. This is my idea. I don't know about its legality, but I would appreciate if everyone would look into it. Please create a compassion fund to allow for verified 501c3 patient support groups to apply for funding. These organizations, like MPAA, provide important services to vulnerable population. In regular weekday, MPAA triages and supports several patients by providing education, hands-on assistance, remote assistance, and we remain a vital directory for the Massachusetts medical marijuana program's participants. Mass Health should pay for physicians' visits. Asking for Mass Health and medical insurance companies to contribute funds to pay for cannabis may be too much too soon. I would much rather see see entry into the medical program streamlined so that a physician is a more respected partner in the patient's treatment plan. We should also utilize our R&D subcommittee to find minimum effective doses for a variety of specific cannabis strains. A patient's first touch with the medical marijuana program should be inside of the physician's office. With our research and development subcommittee ready to begin discussions, finding resources for physician education should be on their task list. Also, I want to say that caregivers and personal care attendants have advocacy groups at the State House. They are seeking relief in tax credits, and there's bills sponsored by David Rogers and Jason Lewis. And I'm looking at this and seeing that the numbers of caregivers caring for patients that may be confused when asked if I can have medical marijuana are out there. Their voices are not being heard. Also, since we're Massachusetts and we all have big families here, I would like to see that personal care attendants and hardship cultivation be done on a case-by-case basis. I was thinking about this ratio, and I thought it would be unfair to families that may have 5 or 6 or 8 siblings, since I actually have my first cousins, there's a bunch of them. So I thought about it and I was like, this doesn't make any sense with the ratios. Pediatric patients need better service and more clear information for all stakeholders on how to access the medical marijuana program. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Next speaker is Frank Shaw. Again, people can feel free to sit at the chair or at the podium, whichever they're most comfortable with. Can you make sure that the microphone's on? It is, thank you. Good morning, Frank, how are you?
Good morning. Hopefully this mic works.
Yeah, just bring it close to you, please.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
You hear me? All right. My name is Frank Shaw, and I live in Ipswich. I'm 66 years old, and I have been a registered patient since 2017. I've been diagnosed as an AIDS patient in Massachusetts since 1998. Medical marijuana can equal lives for some people with AIDS. I want to make the Commission aware of the delays currently happening in the patient registration and renewal. My renewal just took 26 days to be processed by the Commission. My card was expired for 11 days, which meant I could not go to a dispensary and get my medicine. It's a shame because I have been dealing with health issues lately with my foot and just had skin cancer removed from my forehead. Thank God my temporary finally came in last Wednesday because I thought it was never coming. Waiting 4 weeks for a patient card or renewal is ridiculous and unacceptable. Please fix the registration process so patients like me do not face delays in getting our medicine. It was beginning to worry me that this was being done on purpose by the program staff to harm the medical program. This is why the Commission cannot wait for any longer to implement electronic certification and temporary registration. The current registration process is a disaster. No patient should ever have to wait 2 weeks or even a month in my case, to get their temporary card. Physical cards can be mailed just like how temporary and permanent driver's licenses are issued today. The commission should also take this time to revisit the regulation that requires all RMDs to provide free and reduced cost medicine to those with financial hardship. Those who know me best, that I do not have any money. I believe that the regulation needs to be strengthened so RMDs have goals, measurement, and accountability regarding their low-cost access programs for patients. I have doctor's appointments and meetings to get to, so I have to put a lot of money into maintenance and upkeep of my white Jeep. Without the extra donations from my friends and supporters on my GoFundMe, my Jeep would not be on the road. I'm someone who cannot afford to pay a premium for my medical marijuana. I live on Social Security and grateful for my Mass Health benefits, but the industry standard of 10% off is not adequate benefit for people like me. The commission should look at creating a leadership rating in the medical program that recognizes leaders in providing cost-effective access for those with financial hardship. This leadership rating is a great way to encourage businesses to provide low-cost marijuana to patients who need it and to get rewarded for it. I have attached a document to my written testimony on why a nursery class license should be considered under the medical adult use program as a separate single class license. In support of creating a social consumption license, I'm in support of primary and mixed use social consumption as was originally discussed. People like me who live in subsidized housing need a safe place to consume our cannabis product. We need facilities like bars where cannabis consumers can consume this product without the fear of being ticketed or evicted. But the caregiver ratio as it exists today is not reasonable. It does not lead to a number of issues. If the ratio was to be expanded to eliminate, but case by case through an application, this would be more reasonable ratio and less administrative oversight on part of the staff. Caregivers should be able to serve more than one patient. This is a case-by-case caregiver application certificate could work to help senior in living facilities. Please expand the regulations to further incorporate personal care assistance and match the agencies offering PCA-type services. So caregivers can help patients and can go out and get their medical dispensary easily. Patients should not be allowed to get seeds or clones from medical dispensary, should be allowed to get seeds and clones from a medical dispensary. Runs of clones originally come from a licensed grower, properly tagged and recorded in a tracking system. It will help patients grow under hardship to get their plants flower quickly because it cuts the growing cycle time. R&Ds should provide patients with a legal pathway to access seeds and clones. Patients cannot afford to buy marijuana that continues to be allowed to be grown the 60-day supply, especially because hardship discounts are not meaningful. And once promised, homegrown marijuana can be most affordable option for some. Thank you for your time and indulgence.
Thank you, Pat. Next speaker is Jeremiah McKinnon. Morning, Jeremiah.
Good morning.
Let me just introduce Mary Oskeil, Press Secretary, who just walked in. We won't take that off the time.
Thank you, Commissioners. The Commission has done a good job of being responsive. Here are 5 problems that I believe the Commission can fix. Number 1, the $50 annual patient registration fee, and the $50 fee for all patients. Patients are already paying out of pocket to be certified by their doctor. The Commission can absorb the costs associated with doing the right thing here for patients and eliminate that fee. Number 2, the burdensome patient registration process. The Commission needs to fix the registration process. I've met with a countless number of patients to help them register with the medical use of marijuana online system. When I helped my dad register in 2017, I was shocked when he received his temporary within 24 hours. I was like, what? And now I'm shocked to hear that for some reason it's taking 26 days for the staff to process a renewal for a good guy like Frank. Patients need their electronic certification and temporary registration system implemented. Patients need to see their doctor, become certified, leave with their temporary registration card, and be able to buy tax-free medicine all on the same day. Number 3, inadequacy of current financial hardship discount programs. The Commission needs to strengthen the regulation 935 CMR 501-100-1F so medical operators are incentivized to provide more meaningful financial hardship discounts. Hardship discount programs should demonstrate goals, measurement, and accountability of what is being offered, similar to what is demonstrated in a positive impact plan in adult use. Nearly all of the RMDs vying for a license from the DPH in 2013 promised to provide a sliding scale discount program and give free medicine to patients with verified financial hardship. The standard hardship discount in practice today at medical dispensaries is only 10% off though. Those with hardship need a program that serves them so they can actually afford legal tested medical marijuana. And I think a great way to encourage businesses to improve their low-income discounts is for the Commission to create a leadership rating in the medical program that recognizes leaders in providing cost-effective access to those with verified financial hardship. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, but this strengthening of the current regulation can lead into innovative ways for RMDs to compete for the title Best at Providing Cost-Effective Access. Number 4, the unworkable caregiver ratio. Caregivers need to be able to serve more than one patient. I've been a caregiver for over a year to my friend and neighbor, Nicole Snow. We work together and we see each other quite frequently. I became her caregiver in 2017 to pick up products at the RMD and bring them back to her. Over a year later, everything's going well. My mother later asked me to become her caregiver. I submitted an application to the department. It was never approved. The department eventually told me I would have to drop Nicole in order to serve my mother. Caregivers like me should not have to drop a friend to serve a family member. I'm in Boston quite often, and I could be taking advantage of deals and offers for my family members who otherwise cannot access them. Number 5, eliminate the requirement for medical marijuana businesses to be vertically integrated. Why would an adult use retailer ever seek to become a co-located retailer as long as the medical licensing system is vertically integrated? They wouldn't. The whole point of being an adult use retailer is to retail. So the vertical integration requires you to do cultivation and product manufacturing. So the current system is discouraging adult use retailers from becoming co-located retailers, adult use product manufacturers from becoming co-located manufacturers, and so on. I asked the Commission to please eliminate the vertical integration requirement as it's not required in statute. I didn't know I was going to have 5 minutes, so I'll just do a little bit extra here. Is that with the registration process, when I say patients should get their temporary, this is the way I think about it. When you go to the RMV, you get your temporary so you can actually drive home with your car, and that's great. But the other part to it is, what do you have to do to get your physical license? You just wait at home and go wait in your mailbox. The one concern I have is that we're going to create, the patients are still going to have a really difficult application process even when they get their temporary. And the way that I was thinking about this is, you get your temporary and your physical card is going to come in the mail. My concern was that the temporary would be given and that you'd still have to apply for the physical card. So I just wanted to bring that up and say that my intention of advocating for a temporary was so you'd get the temporary that day and it would be mailed to you just like how driver's licenses are issued. And the other thing about this registration process is patients really do sink or swim with this registration process. I mean, if you just look at some of the things about uploading your license, uploaded images must have a minimum resolution of 400 pixels by 360 pixels and must be in JPEG format and a maximum size of 2 megabytes. I mean, imagine all the extra stress and anxiety that goes into patients trying to upload these images to that standard, or even simply comprehending the form to apply. Let's see if I have anything else here. That's about it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeremiah. Next speaker is Joanna Varner. Good morning.
Good morning. How's everybody doing today?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
Doing okay. My name is Joanna Varner. I am a cannabis patient and an activist supporting local groups like Boomtown Greentown. I'm also a Goodwill ambassador and a patient advocate for the New England Grassroots Foundation. But most importantly, I'm a financial hardship patient. I would like to thank the Cannabis Control Commission for taking time to listen to us today. And I would like to thank the citizens of the Commonwealth for voting for a plant, a medicine that changes lives, but that's only if you can afford it. We as the Commonwealth voted for cannabis, but we also voted for the support for those who cannot afford their medication. Basically, I'm on the lowest scale of a hardship patient. I currently only receive temporary disability EIADC, which, if you do not know, is only $300 a month. How do you expect for me to get my medication? How am I supposed to feel better? How am I supposed to go and be able to get the medication that I need? So right now, because I am active in the local community, I go off of donations. That's the only way. So that means I don't know if my medicine's being tested. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know where I'm getting it next. When we, as a Commonwealth, voted for cannabis, when we got that red pamphlet in the mail saying this is what the law is going to entail, it said that we would have a sliding scale for cannabis patients, and it gave an example in that booklet of what a sliding scale would look like. And somebody who's in my position, somebody who lives like the lifestyle or the position that I'm in right now, we were supposed to get free cannabis. We were supposed to walk into a dispensary, have a recommendation, and be able to get a certain amount of free cannabis in order to help us be able to survive every month. That's not happening in this Commonwealth. Unfortunately, what I'm seeing is 10% discount. What's a 10% discount gonna do on $300 a month? How do you expect me, after paying bills with the $5 if I have it, to go in and get a month's worth of medication with a 10% discount? That's one of the issues that we have. I think that as a Commonwealth, we also need to remove the $50 fee. I find it unnecessary. I find if we are getting a recommendation for medication, why do we have to pay to register? One of the other things that I've been seeing, not just with myself, but with other hardship patients that I work with in our community, there's nobody, absolutely nobody, giving help to patients with recommendations, okay? I've seen free recommendations for vets. I think that's an amazing thing that we have, but nobody's doing anything for the hardship. The most a hardship patient would be getting off of that is $50 if they're lucky. I'm fortunate to be in a situation where I have a very good friend that works for Cannabis Docs that helps me out, but that's going again on community donation because I can't afford it. I understand that with the current federal scheduling, that, you know, my normal primary care doctor who works for a healthcare facility cannot give me that recommendation. Because of that, I feel like the state should have some sort of program where if a person is receiving EIADC, disability benefits, food stamps, they should be able to have a sliding scale on how much they pay for the recommendation as well. I feel like it's really important for me to come up here and speak about it because unfortunately, we're seeing right now a lot of the business side of things. We're seeing the recreational side of things. We're not seeing what's going on with our hardship patients. And that's really disturbing me because I am one of them. I fight for them. I see the changes that are necessary in this state, and I think that as a state we have a lot of greatness that we could uphold and that we could be known as the state that cares the most about our patients, and I want to see that happening. So if you could take into consideration some of the things that I spoke about and maybe think about those who are struggling right now, that would mean a whole great deal to a lot of us. Thank you for your time and your consideration today.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Our next speaker is Gary Gill. Morning, Gary.
Good morning, Mr. Hoffman, the board, committee. So you know who I am. I'm Gary Gill. I'm from up in Salem. And I'm the big activist up there with the big voice. And you know exactly what's going on in Salem right now with our host agreements. Even though every time I've been up there, I've been speaking on behalf of the patient. and the senior patient. Just this last couple of days, I took 3 new patients that had a very difficult time going through the process on the internet to finally get their temporary card, but they forgot to put it in their PIN code. So we helped them out with that. They got their card a couple days later, but it was already in the working through the service that they had in Salem, the doctor's office, and he's one of the registered doctors for that. So we got that, and then the second person I went and took physically on Monday morning to a dispensary for his very first time. And the management team there took him in, had a seat, he had a walker, and he created a new account with them and started his first transaction of buying his medicine. He was so thrilled. He's 76 years old. He had bugged me and bugged me and bugged me to help him out with his paperwork, and he did it all on his own other than the last part. And then we helped him out, and he was so gratified that we did that. But the thing that I keep hearing from all my seniors from my dinner club program is they're subsidized housing people, and they're living in a situation now where they can't consume in their units that they're smoking. They've been told to do vape because of the smell and everything like that. So they're at an age right now where we've already heard a couple of horror stories of people of age being kicked out or evicted from public housing. So right now, that's the thing I really want to focus in on today, is the public housing. There hasn't really been a discussion about it. I know it's been brought up several times, but as far as feedback coming from you all, and I don't know what you're hearing on, from the audience itself, but we do need to focus in on some kind of a program where you're going to protect the patient who has a medical card, who lives in subsidized housing, who's on fixed income, and probably have been living in those establishments and units for quite a long time because of the price range. And when it comes to price range, it is all about what she was talking about, the lady that was just before me. When you're on a fixed income, you do whatever you can to get your medicine. And sometimes that is black market medicine. And I had recently had somebody give me some, and I got sick from it. So I threw it away, and I won't do that again. But I'm worried about the seniors that I do take care of, because they are passing things around amongst each other to try to help each other out. And in the long run, it's given a lot of them pneumonia. And when you're HIV and full-blown AIDS, pneumonia is not the thing you want, because it can kill you at your age with a low immune system. So public housing, drop the $50 fee, which I think that's been, you heard over and over again already this morning. And try to come out with some rules and regulations, because I do live in public housing. I am HIV, and I'm worried about that too. But the management team from my building is asking me to ask you to come up with some kind of guideline, because it's a federally funded state kind of situation. They get state money, they get federal money, so they don't want to feel that they're breaking the law by evicting people, but they also want some guidance. And they know I've been coming up here all the time, and they said, please ask them, give us something, give us something that we can give the tenants that are so scared of being evicted. I think that's pretty much all that I have to say.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Thank you, bye.
I just wonder, is Sid, the dog, going to testify?
Yes.
Can he sign in?
He signed it.
Good. Next speaker is Sydney Snow. Good morning.
Good morning. Sydney Snow from E
Yeah, I think I need to get a little closer to my mic.
Sydney Snow from E Solutions.
Great, thank you.
Great. Members of the Cannabis Control Commission, thank you for holding this listening session today and for providing us the opportunity to speak. My name is Sydney Snow, and I'm the Community Affairs Manager for E Solutions. For those who are not aware, EASE is a technology platform that connects adult consumers to local licensed cannabis dispensaries for on-demand delivery. EASE strongly believes that delivery is essential to achieving adequate access in the legal cannabis marketplace, and establishing a regulatory framework to enable its implementation should be a priority. Customer demand for a cannabis delivery option in Massachusetts is increasing, and we offer our assistance to you, the Commission, to share lessons learned from our successful operations in California and Oregon. The EASE platform allows adults to obtain legal cannabis products delivered by background check drivers who are employed by licensed dispensary partners quickly, legally, and safely. Our technology allows dispensaries to track every cannabis product in real time from the moment it leaves the dispensary until the delivery is completed. Through our platform, the customer's identity and age is verified twice. First, when the products are ordered, and second, when they're delivered. Our technology also creates an electronic manifest of every delivery and also takes numerous additional steps to ensure that diversion of product does not occur. Delivery is an extremely effective way of ensuring adequate access to legal cannabis in the Commonwealth. With fewer than a dozen licensed dispensaries in operation, thousands of eligible adults are currently unable to participate in the legal market without committing several hours to do so. For those with mobility challenges or without a car, access is even harder. Each day that goes by without legal delivery is not only an unnecessary restriction in access, but it's also a loss in much needed tax revenue from legal sales. Delivery can allow the license process to play out at the pace that is right for Massachusetts, while offering cannabis to those who are eligible without causing undue burden on the operating dispensary, customers, and the surrounding communities. As you consider the best way to roll out a delivery framework, we encourage you.
We're reserving that for speakers. Thank you. I'm sorry for the interruption.
It's okay. As you consider the best way to roll out a delivery framework, we encourage you to consider the strong demand that already exists for this option. A viable delivery framework should allow scalable businesses an entry point so they can be a part of the ecosystem that can professionally and legally supply that demand. Artificially limiting delivery options will not only restrict much needed access to the legal marketplace, but it will also set retailers up for failure by putting them in an impossible position to meet outsized demand. In sum, we believe that all of these components are crucial in order to ensure that the Commonwealth has a safe, reliable, and effective adult use marketplace. We think that the members of the Cannabis Control Commission will be taking a historic step forward by incorporating delivery into the adult use of cannabis regulation, and appreciate having the opportunity to testify before this body. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. Next speaker is Michael LaTulip. Morning, Michael.
Morning. All right. Oh, hello. Greetings, everyone. It's great to see you all here listening to the public. As you know, I'm on the Cannabis Advisory Board, and I would refer you to the recommendations that were made by the Advisory Board regarding medical use marijuana, social consumption, and delivery as a starting point to developing a strong regulatory framework for the future. The Commission should also enshrine in regulations the Commission's current policies to prioritize medical patients in co-located facilities, including reserved parking and expedited line access. It is working well, and patients are overall happy with the experience. In regards to medical use marijuana, it is clear that changes need to be made to the program that will bring medical use marijuana more in lockstep with the adult use program, especially in the licensing process and fees. The agent fee disparity, as well as the large difference in licensing fees for medical use marijuana, must be taken care of. The licensing process should also be altered to be more like the adult use process, including eliminating the requirement for RMDs to be vertically integrated. It is clear that many products patients need are not being produced by existing operators, and this is one way the Commission can improve medical product availability for patients. Other changes needed to the medical program are related to making it more cost-effective for patients. The temporary registration process needs to be implemented. The $50 registration fee is not called for in statute and can easily be removed by the Commission. I also recommend the Commission strengthen hardship program regulations to make them more like a plan for positive impact developed under adult use. Operators should have to identify goals and metrics for measuring those goals, when implementing their hardship patient programs. If no patients are using an existing hardship program, they should have to revisit the issue and take action. R&Ds that stand above and beyond other operators with their hardship program should be rewarded by offering a leadership category for them to strive towards, similar to what is offered to equity leaders and environmental leaders. I've heard some operators complain they can't offer recreational users discounts, while at the same time they only offer patients that qualify for hardship a flat 10% discount on their products. I think it's clear that patients who qualify for hardship should be getting better treatment than just a flat 10% discount. Please strengthen the financial hardship program for all patients who qualify, and not just specific classes of patients. The Commission also must revisit virtual separation. Some products are different for patients at co-located establishments. The patient supply safety net will not work if operators can select what strains they offer both consumers and patients in co-located establishments before they start collecting the 6 months of data. Please stop the arbitrary selection process by these operators. Additionally, with adult use delivery, if the Commission prioritizes equity applicants for adult use delivery, they should also prioritize those same equity applicants to provide medical delivery. The current medical delivery system is expensive, and if new operators are able to become more ubiquitous than the current medical delivery system, it is clear patients would suffer if they could not also get deliveries from those services. The Commission should incentivize operators to keep medical use marijuana or add medical use marijuana to their facilities by ensuring that all customers are clearly told in adult use only dispensaries that they are not inside a medical use dispensary and can't offer patients any benefits of the program, including tax-free access and product discounts. The Commission should also remove patient identifying information off all cards, receipts, and bottles. Additionally, the Commission should reach out to health agencies to ensure physicians are educated about cannabis and its interaction with other drugs. And with that, I will send in additional written comment, but I thank you guys for hearing me today.
Thank you, Michael. Next speaker is Kamani Jefferson. Who's going to hold your camera? You know you want to take care of that, huh? Morning, Kamani.
Morning. My name is Kamani Jefferson. I am the registered lobbyist and president of the Massachusetts Recreational Consumer Council. And I want to thank the Commission for the opportunity to speak about potential regulatory changes for 935 CMR 500. MRCC believes the biggest changes that must happen are the following. A straightforward pathway for social consumption and delivery applicants and municipalities who would like to be involved. And B, stronger private sector partnerships between social equity applicants and general applicants. If a successful pilot program for social consumption and delivery is to happen in the state, then there must be a more transparent and collaborative way of doing things between the Commission, the municipality, and the applicant. The Commission should have, at minimum, 10 to 15 municipal listening tours across the Commonwealth on how they would like this rollout to be implemented. Both municipal health officials as well as law enforcement must be involved initially for public health and safety purposes. And then once the social consumption and delivery licenses are granted, the Commission should encourage municipalities to form a Citizens Cannabis Advisory Commission. This local governing body can make formal recommendations on cannabis policy, but at least 40% of the members must be representatives of permitted cannabis organizations, and 60% should be self-identified cannabis consumers from that locality. And point two, the MRCC has put together a 5-point program for social responsible businesses. We believe that any business that is licensed or in the application process must be more accountable to achieving full participation by individuals who were disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs. The first 3 points include the marijuana establishment must donate 2% of its gross revenue to the Social Equity Training and Technical Assistance Fund. The marijuana establishment must conduct 50 hours per year of educational seminars targeting residents of areas of disproportionate impact, and one of the following: cultivation, manufacturing, retailing, and business training. And the businesses that are located in areas of disproportionate impact must have 51% or more of the establishment's employees or executives be residents in areas of disproportionate impact for 12 months or more, as determined by the Commission. And these points should look very familiar to you, as they are the voluntary social justice and local employment leaders from 500.040, Leadership Rating Program for Marijuana Establishments and Marijuana-related businesses. These regulations should be required based on the inefficiency of the current social equity program. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamani. Next speaker is Harry Sean Jack. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. Pardon me, I'm not in natural order.
Okay, just a little closer to my phone, please. Can you hear me? I can hear you, I'm just concerned about people in the back.
Good. My name is Harry Jean-Jacques. I'm a lifelong resident of the inner city of Boston. When I was younger, in far better shape, I got into trouble and found myself locked up. I took responsibility for my actions and am now doing the best I can to move forward, to move on with my life despite the permanent barriers that follow. So initially, I got very excited for recreational marijuana. Alas, the excitement was fleeting. I hit a wall when I found out I was barred from participating in anything that has to do with touching the plant due to my past conviction. For this reason, I started Dark Matters Media, a media company focused on highlighting social and economic issues within the Black community. I did this as a way to integrate myself within the marijuana industry as an auxiliary service. I want to spread this opportunity to others in my neighborhood who felt the impacts of prohibition yet have been locked out of this field. Convicted felons should not be left behind while the whole world enjoys a billion-dollar green rush. We need a way to break the cycle of recidivism. If we really want to talk about equity, I believe it's only right that you allow us to have access into the capital gains via the ancillary infrastructure of the cannabis market. Contracts for support services such as plumbing, construction, electrical and security, and other non-plant-based jobs should be awarded exclusively to individuals impacted by the war on drugs. The time is now to ensure the Cannabis Control Commission adheres to their mission statement of creating full participation among the individuals harmed by marijuana prohibition. Another issue I think I've come across very often in the various meetings that go on weekly almost, would be the buffer zone. And Boston is like a school, a church, whatever, in every corner compared to like Milton or Wellesley. I think that disproportionately impacts people of color because we're in the city compared to a different environment. Also, I think we need to look at the, I'm sorry. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Harry. Next speaker is Joseph Gilmore. Morning, Joe.
Good morning. Dear Commissioners, my name is Joe Gilmore. I'm the Community Outreach Director of the Massachusetts Recreational Consumer Council and a lifelong resident of the City of Boston. My comments today are in regards to suggestions for strengthening social equity in the Massachusetts cannabis industry. Equity in the cannabis industry is in a current state of emergency. While mostly out-of-state cannabis conglomerates have made it through the process thus far, disadvantaged business enterprises, including women, veterans, LGBT, and minority-owned businesses only make up 13% of those that have applied. Zero economic empowerment applicants have made it through the application process. Disparities exist not only with those who are applying, but also who's being hired as well. Of the total registered marijuana establishment agents, which include employees, executives, managers, only 4% are Black, 6% Latino, and 1% Asian, and that I find to be unacceptable. So in response to the lack of participation from demographics harmed by the war on drugs, intentionally progressive actions must be taken immediately, and I would like to offer the following suggestions.
Please turn that phone off. Sorry, Joe.
First, Cannabis business should be required, not voluntary, to donate a percentage of their proceeds to the social equity program due to non-correspondence with MGL Chapter 94G, Section 4A4, to ensure full participation among communities disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. In order for the social equity program to be functionable and providing applicants with the necessary technical assistance needed to start a cannabis business, the program must be adequately funded and resourced to ensure a strong rollout and maintain operational integrity. The initial $300,000 was nowhere near enough to develop a substantive statewide equity program. Number two, there must be exclusive access to license types such as social consumption and delivery for equity applicants. While this topic was a major topic of discussion last year, exclusivity for low barrier license types such as these have not been solidified on paper. Providing equity applicants with first movers advantage for these licenses will be necessary in ensuring a more level playing field for small and large operators. And finally, my third recommendation is there must be a stronger focus on community outreach. The 2-week window to apply for the economic empowerment certification was a flawed attempt at creating priority licenses for individuals impacted by the war on drugs. Not nearly enough people knew about this opportunity due to the lack of outreach and reliance on word of mouth to get its way into these harmed communities. These communities require trainings, workshops, and an ongoing presence to acclimate them with incentives being offered by the Commission. The social equity program has only 300 applications so far in a population of the state with 6.8 million. So my suggestion to the CCC would to create an intern program to utilize college students, or at the minimum, allocate funding towards more outreach staff to assist the Commission in getting the word out to communities left in the dark. Social equity in the cannabis industry, it must be a foundational component to the economic welfare of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Next speaker is Karen Hawks. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. My name is Karen Hawks. I'm the Chief Security Officer with Garden Remedies. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Again, I'm just more concerned about people in the back.
Okay.
They're saying it's all good, so keep going.
All good. Okay, great. I actually started out as an advocate for the passage of the humanitarian use of marijuana. And through that advocacy, I met the CEO and founder of Garden Remedies, Dr. Karen Casey. Garden Remedies is the only female physician-led cannabis company in Massachusetts. And under her leadership, we've opened a location in Newton in 2016, in Melrose in 2018, and soon to open in Marlborough. It is our mission to reduce the suffering and continue to advocate for patients. So first off, we believe that there should be less expensive fees or even no fees for the medical card. Now that recreational cannabis legislation has been approved and the state has started to take in revenue from adult use consumption, we strongly believe the state should waive the $50 medical use medical card fee and reduce the burden on medical patients who struggle with steep medical bills while suffering with their ailments. We ask, is it possible for the fees that are generated from the adult use market to be used to subsidize and offset these costs for the medical patients? Secondly, we would like to see some consistency between the regulations and the metric requirements. According to the regulations, the product is to be virtually separated at the point of sale. Metric requires that we tag plants at the beginning of life to be designated at that time as either medical use or adult use. We feel this is impractical. It's frustrating that metric is dictating how we operate because the metric requirements do not align with the regulations that we are obligated to follow. For example, if a test sample fails, then the sample must be resubmitted to a separate lab under metric, and as I said, a plant must be designated at the beginning of life rather than at virtual separation at the point of sale. Also, the amount of training available on the metric is disappointing and insufficient, especially considering how important it is for compliance. The minimal amount of training available is over 2 years old and not specific to, and at times is at odds with, the Massachusetts requirements. Also, under the, security heading, 500.110, in regard to 24-hour video recording requirements, we would like the commission to consider accepting, recording on motion. We are currently required to record and save hundreds of hours of black and empty rooms with no motion. In contrast to 24/7 recording of hundreds of hours of useless video, motion recording records all activity in the viewing area, but eliminates the recording of an empty room or warehouse when no one is there. The vast amounts of irrelevant recordings make searching video unnecessarily cumbersome and will only serve to delay searches and investigations. Record on motion allows for much more efficient searching and tracking of an event. The sensitivity of this technology can be set as high as the state recommends, and we can set how many seconds before and after the activity occurs to be recorded to the drives. We could record every second of motion activity with no dead space and could save months of more video on the existing servers. And keeping in mind the smaller businesses, they could save thousands of dollars on, oh, 1 minute, okay. We also would like to get clarification on the annual security audits. Is this to be done by a separate vendor, or can this be done by our own security companies? We feel that our security companies have knowledge of the system to do the audit, and we're not comfortable sharing our security system with a third party. And also we believe there should be consistency on the use of the cannabis leaf on warning labels. Currently, it can only be used on warning labels, not on company logos. The difference is confusing to the public and may be misconstrued. There are safety issues. If the government wants to make cannabis products easily recognizable to the general public, I have a copy here for you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank all the speakers up to this point for that first thing, in 5 minutes. Really appreciate it. There's a lot of people that want to speak, so I'm grateful that everybody's staying within their limits. Thank you. I apologize ahead of time if I butcher this. Isabel Brunovsky? How did I do?
That's pretty good.
Tell me the truth. Good morning.
Good morning. So my name is Isabel, and I'm an intern for the Massachusetts Recreational Consumer Council.
Isabel, can you speak into the mic and put it down a little bit? Thank you.
Is it good now?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I'm testifying today to emphasize how important it is to offer event licenses as a more accessible alternative to other types of licenses that already exist. And I know that these kinds of licenses can make a world of difference to a struggling individual or family who wants to participate in the industry. My own immigrant parents have made a living as licensed street vendors in New York City for over 20 years. Without their licenses, they would not be able to operate their small business, and they would not have been able to provide for our family. Based on this experience, I believe that 1- and 3-day event licenses could be similarly beneficial to underserved populations by providing them with more opportunities to participate in the marijuana industry. So crucially, Massachusetts marijuana law says that there must be inclusive participation from individuals in communities harmed by the war on drugs. Given that the social equity program in its current form is failing to properly accommodate applicants from underserved populations, new approaches to equity should be considered. And I think that one of the most intuitive ways to make this industry more accessible is to make the licensing process more accessible and the licenses themselves more accessible, financially, technically, and otherwise. So based on all of this, I strongly support the creation of a new licensing category, which is 1- and 3-day event licenses. Right now, we're seeing that many economic empowerment applicants and social equity applicants are submitting incomplete applications. With the introduction of event licenses, we may see that more and more EE and SE applicants are successfully completing applications for the following reasons. So 1, of course, event licenses could be a relatively affordable alternative to licenses such as retail licenses or cultivation licenses. And two, planning an event can also be less technically demanding than starting a business or a cultivation operation. And I also want to note that the Commission itself has stated its support for social equity applicants to receive initial exclusive access to certain types of licenses. And I think that event licenses could be one type of license that is exclusively available to SE applicants. So I strongly urge the Commission to consider the creation of these types of licenses, 1 and 3A event licenses that could help make the marijuana industry more accessible to social equity and economic empowerment applicants. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Next speaker is Chris Silva.
Actually, I just signed up.
That's fine, no problem, Chris. Next speaker is it Kenny Mack? Now you can sit in that chair. I should apologize for that before.
Let me savor that moment the commissioner just apologized to me. First of all, I just want to say thank you to this commission for your leadership. This isn't like disrupting the media industry from a college dorm room at Harvard. This is actually creating a new industry from whole cloth out of something that was previously unlawful and is still illegal under federal law. So thank you for your leadership, and it really makes me proud to be a Bostonian, to be from Massachusetts, to be from Uplands Corner, to be from Dorchester. My name is Kenny Mack. I am the managing partner of a minority-owned operating group called Organic Relief Solutions. We couldn't be more excited to be coming to Massachusetts, and I just want to talk to you today about cannabis industry work and about cannabis industry growth. We believe that cannabis industry jobs can turn into careers that can support middle-class lives and enable people to leave legacies that they can be proud of, regardless of their education level or any previous mistakes they've made in their lives. Cannabis industry work represents a second chance for workers, and candidly, if you can't get a second chance as a worker in the cannabis industry, in the weed business, then there are no second chances in American life. This commission can continue to lead by providing cannabis industry workers in Massachusetts essentially with a workers' bill of rights, something that could include a living wage, access to health care, family and medical leave, and clearly identified workplace safety standards. Again, you are creating a business on whole cloth, and so these are things to consider. Some realities about the cannabis industry market: it's been estimated at $130 billion a year by 2029. That's not that far away, and $130 billion a year is a lot of money. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that that business is already going on. It's just happening currently untaxed. And the untaxed market, which includes criminal organizations who never have to think about taking care of their workers or never have to think about generating revenue to cover budgetary shortfalls for city and state and local governments, that market is healthy and thriving at $130 billion a year. And until and unless industry and regulators can find a way to work together to diminish and eventually eliminate the untaxed market, it's going to remain healthy and thriving. And because we all want the adult use market to grow, and because the overwhelming majority of the growth in the adult use market is going to come out of the untaxed market, industry and government have a common goal of diminishing and eventually eliminating the untaxed market. So public policy should prioritize moving customers and providers who are currently working in the untaxed market into the adult use market as much as, if not more than, generating revenue for city and state and local governments, because the untaxed market will be here forever. It's not going away. And more regulatory burden, more tax imposed on operators, imposed on the industry by government, just makes the untaxed market that much more appealing to customers and providers. It provides a disincentive for people to transition over into the adult use market. And so as operators, in addition to competing against criminal organizations who don't have to think about taking care of their workers or paying their taxes, the federal government then adds an additional burden where you can't deduct regular business expenses. And so you're hit with the double whammy of competing with criminals and then not being able to fully deduct your expenses to fully take advantage of the federal tax structure. And so more regulatory obstacles and higher taxes lead to fewer legal options and higher and increased costs, which discourages customers and providers in the untaxed market from converting over to the adult use market, which slows its growth. And we all want the adult use market to grow. So, just following my notes here. Thank you very much, Commissioner Title. For a multi-track approach, industry groups should be incentivized to work with district attorneys and public defenders to create a system or a structure to identify offenders of any age level in the untaxed market and put them on track for cannabis industry jobs. If they're already working in the business, it makes sense to educate them about their product, to educate them about how to actually run a business or to work in a company that will educate them on how to run a business. And then it essentially has the effect of simultaneously diminishing the untaxed market while creating jobs and generating tax revenue. And I just think that it's important that this commission keep in mind that operators like us will always, always, always have to compete against the untaxed market. We have a common goal in eliminating the untaxed market because they stick around. They're not going anywhere. And all the product, all the medicine that's produced, if it doesn't make it into the adult use market, it finds its way into the untaxed market, and that just really, it increases costs for everybody, and nobody wants that. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Oh, and I'm happy to submit these comments by email to the commission.
Please do, thank you. We're going to do 2 more speakers and then we're going to take a break. So next speaker is Ben Borga. Morning, Ben.
Morning. Thank you very much for the time. I wanted to speak to you this morning briefly just about a frustration I have in regards to the social equity program. I greatly enjoy hearing all of the plans and ideas that are being mentioned for social equity, but it seems to me that the missing piece is never discussed, and that's how to pay for it. Social equity, by definition, means fairness. As someone who is currently pending with 2 applications before the CCC, I can attest to the fact that it is a, at times, soul-crushing journey, challenging process, but I'm very fortunate. I'm in a situation that allows me to pursue it, and it will not be the end of the world if it's not successful. I'll simply try my hand at something else. However, I cannot imagine without the resources and access that I've had, even undertaking this. I recently helped a friend simply apply to be a qualified social equity candidate, and that was overwhelming for him, but we got it done. But the idea of him then transitioning, if approved, into the licensure process, regulatory process, and then starting that business and operating it and being successful on his own it's not going to happen. I think in an industry that was created with the mandate to benefit those impacted by the war on drugs, the opportunity has been presented for you to ask us, those of us who don't qualify for social equity, the for-profit, well-funded applicant, to contribute to the solution. I'm not in any means suggesting a pay-for-play type of scenario. I'm instead suggesting the opportunity that for for-profit companies to contribute to the solution, whether it be for a streamlined review process, whether it be for access to something they normally might not have access to, whatever the case might be. I think you would find that a lot of for-profits, especially state of Massachusetts-based companies, would gladly take part in that, whether it's from a social equity perspective or a business perspective. The host community agreements require you to commit significant financial resources for the opportunity to conduct your business within that municipality. It's cost of doing business. Some of them are huge, some of them are more friendly to the business, but those exist. There's a similar opportunity with social equity. Kamani's plans are great, but they require money, training, education, jobs, bringing people not just into the industry from this perspective of being employees, but bringing people into the industry as owners in order for them to pursue wealth. That can't happen unless the playing field is fair. Equity is, by definition, fair. There's nothing fair when you compare my friend who applied for a social equity status and myself and the resources we have. If we need more money, we get more money. If we need more resources, more attorneys, more business advisors, more political lobbyists, we hire them. It's the situation within everything in the world. But because of the mandate behind this law, this is the one industry where we can actually say, no, that's not how it's going to work. If you want access to this, you need to contribute to this, because that's what fairness is. So I think my frustration lies in the fact that no one's asked me to partake in that process, and we would gladly do it if asked. I kind of thought it would happen, so I was waiting, but after speaking with people, it was suggested to me that I say it out loud, so that's what I'm doing. So we would love the opportunity for you to ask us to contribute to it. I think that in order for this to truly be an equitable process, it does need to be fair, and we need to provide opportunities to people who simply don't have them, and that won't change. And I think that that will also help with the concern in regards to national versus state-based businesses, because I think people that are invested in the Commonwealth are much more likely to take part in that. And the good news is the national guys have enough money that they'll pay it just as a cost of doing business. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Appreciate it. Jim Smith is the next speaker. Morning, Jim.
Good morning. Thank you.
I guess we're technically good afternoon, Jim.
Good, thank you. And I appreciate being in the first wave of speakers. You know us, we have, none of us went to law school to study cannabis, and none of us did study, perhaps partake, but not study the product. But we have, over the last few years, been involved with about 40 separate entities in this industry. It has been an experience. The initial law, initial petition, almost 6.5 years old, around 50 or so stores open. The new law, almost 2.5 years old, about a dozen, not quite. Fair question, what is taking so long? There's one word answer: communities. It's the cities and towns. That is where the logjam is. What we have found over this last number of years is where we get stuck all the time, and where our clients get stuck all the time. And there are a number of things that are that happen. Obviously, this is zoning. This state has a long history of local control. We're very parochial. The zoning statute is well enmeshed in the Commonwealth's laws. It has really provided a great difficult path for all of us to get into this industry. We have run into things such as buffers, as you've heard. A half-mile buffer is a mile-wide circle. Half-mile radius each side, a mile-wide circle in the middle of the town pretty much wipes out the town. That's one. There's not much left in terms of real estate after that. We run into the 50-foot, or the 500-foot buffers, 500-foot statute that says, the statute, by the way, says 500 feet or less from a public a school K through 12. What we have seen, and it was all over this Commonwealth, they've added language 500 feet from churches, funeral parlors, cemeteries, daycare centers, playground, little league fields, boys clubs, girls clubs, YMCA's, CCD classes, toy stores. That was a new one for us. Health centers, pediatric doctors, hospitals, universities. There's actually 1,000 feet from a couple of the universities. Methadone clinics, adolescent psych facilities, residences. Ultimately, there's very little left in the community by way of real estate available to us, which means the cannabis premium is even higher to rent that real estate. It is more expensive to enter the industry at that point. And that has a real impact on all of us in this room, particularly, I know those of the 5 of you. So once we have now this parcel identified and we've gotten control of it, typically there'll be a number of people looking at the very same parcel. It becomes, in some cases, an auction. Highest price wins. But once we have the parcel, then only then do we go to the community. Typically now we run into review committees, some of which require us to submit the same materials we submit to you all over again. And not, well, we haven't submitted to you yet, obviously, but all that materials, they're gonna review, even though everybody acknowledges the CCC does a thorough job, and the statute and your regulations are very particular, very compelling, very accurate, and very protective. We do it again in many cities and towns, at expense and at the cost of time and delay. Once we've got through that process, if we get through the review committee, we can then apply for zoning. We then go for a special permit. to the Special Permit Granting Authority, to the ZBA, perhaps the Board of Selectmen, perhaps the City Council. There are 351 cities and towns. There are 351 sets of rules and regulations. No two so far have I come across that are similar. If we get through that process, and this will take months, because these are public hearings which have to be advertised. And there's a process, and there's no mandate, A, that you win, or that they vote on the same meeting that they meet at. Oftentimes, they might just adjourn the meeting and come back and vote next month, if there's a quorum. This takes significant time. Once all of that happens, then and only then do we address the host community agreement, which is the largest problem at the community level, believe it or not. You have heard, I think you're all familiar with this, there's so many areas of issues, I'm not gonna go through them specifically, just mention a couple. The statute requires that these be reasonable costs that we impact on the community. They are untethered to any actual costs at all. Oftentimes they go beyond 5 years against the statute. Some have no limit, they're in perpetuity apparently. We have to acknowledge, we have to sign that we agree that this meets the statute, even though we know it doesn't. We have to agree we can't sue, even though we should. We have to mandate charitable donations. A mandated donation is clearly an oxymoron. There are sometimes guaranteed minimum payments that are minus 3%. What about cultivation? We are now being asked to give 3% of our cultivation sales, well, there are no sales. They say, well, you track it to retail and you get those 3% there. I want to make one closing point. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Your process here is clear, it's transparent, it's predictable. At the city and town level, none of that occurs. We need you and the legislature to join us to really focus on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Okay, we're gonna take a break. It is, according to my watch, 27 past 12. We're gonna take a 10-minute break and reconvene. Thank you very much.
I thank you for letting me share my story, and I hope it helps you in making the best decision for the patients and not people wanting to make money off them. We get enough of that already. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Looks like we have a tag team next, Linda Frazier and Matt, that's Saltman.
We just signed in.
Okay, no problem. No, not a problem at all. Then we have a few people that I think have talked already that signed in twice, so I'm going to skip them. And the next speaker is John Arnold. John? Okay, we'll come back. Fred Lasita. Okay, no problem. Luke, I'm sorry, I can't, Marut?
Yeah, I was just signing in.
No problem, no problem. Jonathan Capano? Chris Vining?
Not here to speak.
Okay. He's not here or he's not speaking?
Not speaking.
Not speaking, okay, thanks. So the ones that are not responding, I'm just going to come back at the end and just give them another chance in case they were out. Next speaker is Ed D'Souza. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ed D'Souza, and I'm here to represent my company, Riverrun Gardens. I want to share a small story, or more of a 1,000-foot point of view on my experience during the licensing application. For those of you who don't know, I started my company about 5 years ago, hoping to get into the medical side, but realized that we could not because of the financial requirements. My company's a small 4-person operation, family-owned. We're Massachusetts born and bred. When the laws changed and the provision for micro licenses came about, we decided we were going to go as a micro license for cultivation. What we have found since we started this process, aside from the financial burdens that we've accepted, I say accepted because we did dive into this knowing that we would have to take seconds on our house, start eating ramen and all of that fun stuff, was we had to learn an awful lot on the municipal process, the laws, regulations, and when all is said and done, I just like to say I'm going to be proud to be the first company in the state to have to do everything twice. I had successfully got a warehouse in Newburyport, obtained a host agreement, a special permit, and unfortunately was kicked out of my warehouse last year by a prohibitionist. That's a lawsuit that is on a separate matter. But it put us in a point where we had to go ahead and find a new location or else be out the couple $100,000 that we had spent in this already. By the grace of God, we were able to find another location and are currently going through the process all over again. We have a special permit hearing coming up April 3rd. We already have our host agreement with the mayor of Newburyport. But the problem is I'm afraid that when all is said and done, the micro business that we're applying for is going to be lumped into the same category as everybody else, and that I may not be able to start construction on my business until we're looked at. There's a lot being said about the equity programs and such. I would like to offer the idea that maybe micro businesses find some type of way to get a faster look, because we are small, we are underfunded, we are competing with the conglomerates that have come from out of state. A quick example of what some of the conglomerates have done, when we found our way back into Newburyport, we had to fight for the space because the town put a cap on the number of the square footage for cannabis businesses allowed in the municipality. Well, once I got kicked out of my warehouse, the conglomerate that was my neighbor said, hey, we're going to go ahead and increase our cap so that we squeeze these guys out of here. Thankfully, we had a good lawyer to be able to get us back in. But there should be some type of benefit for going for a micro business. We don't have the millions in capital. You know, we're doing whatever we can. Aside from that, what I would like to say is a lot of people have talked about access towards medical cannabis for people who are on the poverty side or veterans or so on and so forth. One of the proposals I've been talking to all my potential customers about was we should have an avenue where we can actually give away product destined to these individuals. For example, as a cultivator, if you want to do business with me, I would gladly do business with you as long as you accept, hey, you're going to buy 10 pounds for retail. Well, let me give you a pound or a couple of pounds of cannabis that you can then give to your customers who prove they are below the poverty guidelines or are veterans by showing their DD-214. Currently, I know that is not able to happen since we're not able to gift on a commercial level, but maybe there should be some sort of avenue for that to take place, because as a cultivator, we want to be able to do good. And again, originally getting into the medical side of, or wanting to get into the medical side of things, I'm not looking to, you know, extend the recreational side. I want to see my product going to help people that need it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, appreciate that. Next speaker is Luke Gavin. Did I get that right?
Gavin.
Gavin, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello, Chairman Hoffman and everyone on the Commission. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to share my perspective today. I'm here on behalf of a small collective of businesses in the state of Massachusetts that include caregiver delivery services, small growers, and patients, all looking to have equitable access to this industry. 6 years ago, there was meant to be 50 licenses available, and after year one, that didn't happen. This left many patients without access to their medicine. Caregivers stepped in to fill the regulatory gap in order to help those patients. Despite doing everything in my power to run a patient-centered operation, while also providing for my family, but found the complexity and the gray areas inherent to the law to be a barrier that I could not cross on my own. I currently live in Oregon due to the fact of not having clear laws in the state of Massachusetts. The laws have changed from caregivers having a different patient at any one time to caregivers only being able to have one patient total. We want to ensure those who are the most vulnerable, the patients, have the best price point and access to their medicine. Having high costs of entry increases the cost for patients. A good example of this is armored cars. For delivery licenses or to be able to deliver currently, you have to have armored vehicles, multiple cameras in the car, and 2 people required to make that delivery. While those regulations make sense for a commercial grade operation seeking primarily to profit, small operations seeking to assist patients with low cost medicine are fundamentally unable to do so in the face of such onerous requirements. Due to confusion regarding the current laws for caregivers, there is no current cogent regulation of these services. Services that get shut down due to these complexities of the regulations involved have a knock-on effect for patients. An excellent example of this is Boston Best Buds, who was a medical delivery service based in Quincy, operating in the strict confines of the regulations, who was nonetheless shut down. After being shut down, multiple patients complained directly to the Commission that they had lost access to their medicine for upwards of 3 weeks. A real harm to the most vulnerable. To this date, that case has been pushed down the line on 8 different occasions, and nothing has happened to it apart from his business being shut down and those patients no longer having access to that medicine. There needs to be avenues for those currently operating in this legal gray area to be invited to be able to start legally paying taxes and to have a business license. As was already explained today, there's a lot of businesses that are currently thriving and they're doing so without legislation. We want to create avenues for those companies to come into it. There needs to be an avenue for patients to choose their caregivers and know that these caregivers meet certain standards of testing to ensure safety for our patients, while also providing products at a cost that doesn't overwhelm those on a fixed income. Caregivers should be given special licensing under the proposed changes to the medical marijuana rules. The caregiver-patient relationship is the most important part of the relationship. It's about health and the well-being of the patient. We need to expand the current caregiver-patient ratio, ideally to a ratio of 10 patients for every 1 caregiver in a given collective. Caregiver services offer greater strain variety, lower pricing, and better staff-to-patient ratio than commercial operations. Lower barrier to entry creates more competition and is better for the patients. There is already existing protocols in place for bike messengers that can deliver opioids from CVS, human organs, payroll, alcohol. Let's try use these existing avenues to create a place where caregivers and delivery services can operate. In summary, let's create a cap on startup fees for caregiver delivery services, expand the current caregiver-patient ratio to 10:1, and provide licensing for existing services that have served this community for the past 5 years, and also to allow for bike messengers to deliver cannabis. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Again, please note. Thank you. Thanks, Lou. Next speaker is Andrea Bellata. Again, I apologize in advance. Did I screw that up?
Bellata, close enough.
I'm sorry, what is it?
Bellata.
Bellata. Apologize. Good afternoon.
Thank you. I'm just here representing myself as a really sick woman. Used to weigh 300 pounds. Medical conventions are failing me. Past 2 years, they do not know anymore what's wrong with me. 4 years ago, an ex-boyfriend of mine tried to convince me to smoke cannabis. I was so tired of seeing me in my pain. I grew up, stay away from the wacky tobacco. That's the generation I grew up in. I tried it. I said, what the hell do I have to lose? And the first puff, of course I coughed my lungs up, but okay. Took another one, went down on his bed to lay down, and I was like, oh. I don't want to admit this to him, but I'm feeling a little relief. Fast forward a couple of years, still no diagnoses, 8 more diseases added into me. Can you tell? Everyone tells me I look healthy. I'm not. If I don't have my cannabis, I have nothing. At the age of 18, My doctor started me right on oxys. 18. 3 herniated discs in my back. No reason why. Probably because I was 200 pounds then. Fast forward to a bad marriage, almost up to 300 pounds. Could no longer walk. I had a 10-year-old daughter at home. Divorce was right after. I was making $12 an hour trying to support my daughter and myself. This state told me I made too much money. 2016, somehow the federal government declared me dead. State of Massachusetts shut down my Mass Health. Try proving that you're alive once the federal government declares you dead. I only got my passport back last December. I had to file an affidavit saying who I was just to file taxes. So I need my home delivery because I'm not able to get to the dispensaries. I lived 5 minutes from the Brockton one. I would check their menu online, it would just say updated 7 minutes ago. I'd rush over there. Nope, sorry, we have nothing for you. Where do I go? No other choices. I prefer home delivery. I use it. I'll continue to use it. Is it illegal? Yep. I need my medicine, and I need it consistently. I cannot go a day without it. I'm on a fentanyl patch. Everyone talks about fentanyl, what it looks like. Okay, nobody knows what it looks like. All you hear is fentanyl, fentanyl, fentanyl on the news. Okay? I used my opiates as needed, not as prescribed. Maybe that's the difference. I don't have that little addictive gene that everyone tries to say. It's needed, it's on God's earth, it's a natural product. Get it to us medical patients. I'm only 51. I died 7 years ago on an OR table. What more is it gonna take to get society to catch up with the needs of us? I think I'm relatively young compared to some of the ones that have been up here. 2 years ago, like I said, diagnosed with 8 more illnesses. How many more are they gonna find in me? So, anything that you can do to help us little people, it's needed. It's needed. You try living off of $12 an hour before taxes, raising your family, and try to get your medicine through a dispensary. It's impossible. Impossible. Thank you.
Andrea, thank you very much. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Jacob Graver. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this. I apologize. Michael Yamana.
Oh, I just wrote the wrong list.
So you're not, okay, you're not speaking? Okay. Thank you. Lucas there? I know Lucas was here.
Hi.
Oh, there he is. Hiding over there. Afternoon, Lucas.
Good afternoon. I'm a patient, a farmer, a caregiver, and I've got some suggestions. Thanks for hearing us and hearing our suggestions. I would like for you to remove any restrictions to licensure based on open cases or prior convictions. These people that have open cases, especially open cases related to cannabis charges, are the ones who have been operating cannabis businesses in Massachusetts for a long time now. They will be the best candidates to operate cannabis businesses in the legal market, and absent any licensure, they're likely to continue operating illegal cannabis businesses. So if you really do, like you say you do, want to discourage the black market, then please encourage the black market to get licensing by allowing people with open cases and convictions related to cannabis and other substances to get those licenses. Please allow social use establishments to open. I know we have the Summit Lounge in Worcester. It's wonderful. We need one of those in every town, or at least every town that has a bar that sells beer. It's a safer alternative, as you know. Remove any penalties for possession of Class D with intent to distribute. This would be an issue for the legislature, so I would ask that you encourage the legislature to do so. Possessing Class D with intent to distribute is, morally and legally speaking, the same as shoveling snow without a license. And so, if someone doesn't have a license and they're operating a cannabis business, they shouldn't be treated as a criminal. That may be penalized for not paying taxes, like an infraction, but not a criminal offense anymore. Stores should sell seeds, seedlings, and clone, and offer free or cheap growing classes. Both the medical dispensaries and the recreational adult use shops should encourage home cultivation. And we should increase the plant count limits. Those are designed to maximize the profits for the stores. The plant count limits are really terrible for a grower who maybe if they're growing outside, half of their plants go to mold, or if you're growing from seed, half of your plants will end up being male. So you lose half of your grow at certain stages of the grow anyway. So increase those limits, and that'll allow for growers to really be able to produce. And then once those growers do produce, we should be able to have small 1 and 3 day event licenses to bring our farmed goods to market. Much like at a farmer's market, I can bring eggs, I can bring sheep wool, I can bring raspberries that I grew on my farm to market to sell for a single day with a very affordable license. It's usually $25, $40 or so. We should be able to do that with our cannabis that we grow at our home cultivation operations as well. I'd like you to reduce the cannabis use age to 18. This will discourage people from starting to drink early. If the drinking age maintains at 21 and the cannabis age gets reduced to 18, that'll be a 3-year window when people can legally consume cannabis but not alcohol, and so they'll see a benefit, a health benefit to the cannabis over the alcohol, so hopefully that'll discourage long-term drinkers from having alcohol problems. You've heard this before, I'll say it again, I can't say it enough times. Remove the $50 fee for the card for patients. You haven't heard this one today yet. Refund all of the patients, all of the $50 fees that we've ever paid within the program from taxes from the rec adult use program. We got ripped off for $50 a year for the past several years. We'd like our money back, please. Increase possession limits for in public and in private. 1 ounce is an unreasonable amount, especially for edibles, and an edible weighs many more than 1 ounce. And legalize public cannabis consumption. Oh, this isn't in my notes, but concentrates should be viewed the same, legally speaking, as flour. Apparently it's a 5-gram limit for concentrates and a 1 ounce limit for flour. Increase the concentrate limit to the same limit as you have for flour. Reduce fees for outdoor farming. I really do appreciate that you had the 50% discount on the fees for outdoor farming, but if you notice, there are no outdoor farming licenses yet, which means that there's some problem in the licensing process that's not allowing these outdoor farmers to get their licenses, mainly related to the towns, so remove some of the ability for towns to prevent farmers from farming outside. Also, for the small batch home grow, the 12 plants, we shouldn't have to have a fence, thank you, around our grow, and we shouldn't have to make it opaque. That's an extremely high cost, and so if we're not allowed to sell the cannabis that we're growing for recreational purposes, then we shouldn't have to dump thousands of dollars into fencing supplies just to be able to grow it in our backyards. Towns are practicing extortion on businesses that want to open up cannabis shops in their town. They're charging way more than 3% on the community host agreement, and businesses that are willing to pay are just going ahead and violating law and not actually following that 3% guideline. One more bit. Tell law enforcement and district attorneys to stop harassing cannabis users and business owners. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Lucas. The next couple names have X's put next to them, which I didn't do. Did you do?
Yeah, they did.
They did not want to. Thank you.
My name is Matthew Gamble. I'm the Vice President of Operations at Theory Wellness in Bridgewater, Massachusetts. I'd like to start by thanking you for giving us the opportunity to provide feedback and guidance on the future developments of legalized cannabis in Massachusetts. The topic I would like to provide input today on is the standards for lab testing, how they relate to the dosing of cannabinoids in medical or marijuana products. The process a manufacturer must follow to produce a marijuana product involves creating or procuring a cannabis extract and using that extract to titrate cannabinoids into a product recipe. The cannabis extract is tested by an approved laboratory, then an appropriate amount of oil is calculated and added to the batch to produce the desired cannabinoid level. The finished marijuana product is then sent to an approved lab to again be tested for cannabinoids. Current regulations allow for a maximum dose of 5 milligrams of THC per individual serving of marijuana product, but due to the practical limitations of laboratory testing, this is an impossible limit to achieve on a consistent basis. The testing methodologies allow for up to a 20% variance of recovery versus a nominal cannabinoid preparation. This means a test for any specific cannabinoid could be under or overstated by up to 20%, while still falling within an acceptable range. This variance can be compounded because both the cannabis extract and the final marijuana product are subject to the same variance. Current regulations, however, do not allow for any variance above the 5 milligram limit. Due to the irreversible nature of creating a marijuana product, there is far too much risk for a product manufacturer to allow the variants to potentially return a result above the 5 milligram limit, so the effective dosing limit is below what is intended. Our suggestion is to allow for an acceptable variance range of titration for all marijuana products to account for the variable nature of cannabinoid testing. We suggest that a 15% variance be permitted for marijuana product dose limits. This mirrors the standard acceptable range designated by the USB for the manufacturing of pharmaceuticals and would account for nearly all cases of variance in the lab testing methodologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. I think I've already got, you gave and we did already. Next speaker I have is Grant Ellis.
Good afternoon,
Grant. How are you?
Chairman Hoffman, thank you. How are you?
Thanks.
Good afternoon to the commission, and thank you for affording me this opportunity to speak today. I myself am disabled and, for the most part, homebound medical patient. I was 26 years old and a graduate student at Boston College, 4 years into a postdoctorate degree studying a quantitative methodology to examine the potency of public discourse in the context of the backroom deliberations of lawmakers and regulators. So, unfortunately, overnight in May of 2014, my throat began collapsing and my esophagus and airway began penetrating into each other. It affects nerves going into my face and my eye, and so I can't see very well and my face always hurts. In any event, I went through a painstaking 18-month process of hospitalizations, inpatient experiences, and general hell. By the end of that, I was on such a litany of medications that I can't even list them all. But anyway, about 18 months in, one of my doctors realized that things weren't going to get better, and they recommended that I try to use medical cannabis as a way to supplement some of the pharmanarcotics that they were prescribing. And with medical cannabis, over about 6 months, I was able to reduce that dosage by almost a third. And that had a big impact, not only in terms of my quality of life, but also in terms of not being constantly dizzy from the narcotic medications. In any event, because I'm so limited in my mobility, I'm dependent on cannabis caregiver services, and I'm also on Social Security disability. I don't use dispensaries because not only are the fees for delivery exorbitantly high, but some of the menu prices are also exorbitantly high. One dispensary wanted to charge me 40% of my SSDI stipend for 1 month, just to get 1 ounce of flour, which is what I consume over the course of a month. And that's just impractical. I would have no ability to get an Uber to my doctor if I were spending that much on my cannabis each month. So I rely on small mom and pop caregiver operations, and I do so because one, they do not charge me a delivery fee. The one I use now waives delivery fees for disabled and homebound patients. Never seen a dispensary do that. And the second is they only charge about $200 per ounce, which is almost a 75% decrease from the retail price of dispensaries. And I think it's imperative that the commission take steps to not only protect these caregivers in law who are helping patients like myself that barely have any say in this process due to our physical limitations, but also to expand those protections for caregivers. I heard mentioned earlier the ratio of caregiver to patient. Currently, it's hard for me to even find a caregiver because they're forced to work within the confines of this 1-to-1 limit. And so when I lose a caregiver, it can take me 3 to 4 weeks to find another one, during which I'm using a lower dose of medication than I would be otherwise, and I don't have access to cannabis at a price I can afford. So I implore the commission to allow these caregivers to operate with effective regulatory oversight that gives them an expanded number of patients per caregiver, that allows them to operate in collectives, that allows them to register with the commission on an expedited basis without any of the procedural hurdles facing other applicants. These are not moneyed groups. They're small mom and pop operations trying to help patients, especially homebound patients, and they should be given some kind of carve out in the law to enable them to more seamlessly provide those services. Beyond that, the type of care that I receive from a caregiver is not just a commercial sale. Every caregiver I've ever had has come into my home, talked with me about my conditions, and helped me find medication that best serves my needs. And I think it is imperative that the commission put a focus on that kind of holistic interaction rather than just looking at the commercial and tax elements of the law. I understand it's important. I'm just begging the commission not to forget the knock-on impact that can happen to patients like myself when these small operations are pushed out of the market due to onerous regulatory burdens. So I appreciate the time of the commission today, and I would also just leave one final note that the commission should continue to liaise with the legislature to ensure that 3% cap on community host agreements is enforced strictly, because to do otherwise further limits access to the market for these small businesses, and thus means there's less competition and higher prices for patients like myself. So thank you.
Next speaker is Ethan Vogt. How are you, Ethan?
I'm great, thank you. My name is Ethan Vogt. I'm a resident of Roxbury and a founder of Homegrown Boston, which is an arts organization that operates in the cannabis space. I want to thank you for this opportunity to give testimony, and really thank you for the service that you guys have taken on to the Commonwealth. I hope that over the last 2 years you guys have met a lot of the cannabis community. You've seen that we're educators, that we're farmers, that we're business leaders, we're artists, we're healers. And I imagine you've visited other states and probably have more experience than some people in this room in seeing how the operations, or how it rolls out, and how it tends to pretty much function, is my understanding. I hope you've tried a CBD tincture at one point too, and yourself kind of understood that this is not something to be too afraid of. So I think what I want to talk about today is I feel like as recreation opens and spreads, that social use and social consumption is of great is of great benefit. We have this community that you guys have met that has great expertise, that has great compassion, and we cannot be a service to the general public if there aren't spaces in which we can engage with them. So I think nobody would agree that eating an edible at home is the best way for somebody to be introduced to cannabis. That if there were spaces permitted, that we could reduce the stigma. We could go, people could bring their grandmother to try it among. I'm literally talking about, like, I think there's a lot of interest out here, and we're impaired by not being able to do this. So I want to talk about kind of 3 points that I want to make towards social consumption. The first recommendation I have is for you guys to, and I know this is ongoing, and these are really responding to what I've heard from you guys as concerns about social consumption, which is to define smoking, and define smoking very carefully, because we're very flexible to work around regulations, and nobody wants people to be subjected to secondhand smoke if they don't want to, et cetera, et cetera. But if smoking was defined as the combustion of the herb with fire that we know has some concerns around carcinogens, if it was defined very specifically, and then vaping or other methods of consuming was allowed, then that would give us some flexibility. I don't support going to an all edible social consumption space. I just think